Hello, my name is Victoria Hastings, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about family, success, and revenge. Picture this: Christmas dinner, 2016. I'm sitting at my childhood dining table, watching my father hand over his multi-million-dollar manufacturing empire to my two brothers while completely ignoring my existence. 8 years later, I'm worth $1.7 billion, and they're begging me to save the very company they inherited. But here's the twist: my revenge wasn't what anyone expected, including myself. Before we embark on this incredible journey together, I have a small, heartfelt favor to ask. Please subscribe to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing but means the world to me. And let me know in the comments which beautiful corner of the world you're watching from. Your support truly makes all the difference. You see, growing up as the only daughter in the Hastings family meant being perpetually overshadowed. My father, Robert Hastings, built Hastings Manufacturing from the ground up in Nebraska, turning it into a regional powerhouse. My brothers, Marcus and Derek, were groomed from birth to take over. Me? I was expected to marry well and produce grandchildren. The fact that I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with degrees in computer science and business meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. That Christmas dinner 8 years ago changed everything. As snow fell outside our family's colonial mansion in Omaha, my father made an announcement that would shatter our family forever and set in motion a chain of events nobody could have predicted. What happened next wasn't just about proving them wrong. It became something much more complex, much more satisfying, and frankly, much more devastating than simple revenge. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany dining table as my father stood, wineglass raised, ready to deliver what he clearly considered his greatest Christmas gift. I was 26 then. Fresh from completing my MBA at Stanford, my tech startup already showing promising early metrics. I'd driven 12 hours from Silicon Valley, foolishly hoping this might be the year he'd finally acknowledge my achievements. "Family," Robert began, his voice carrying that familiar authoritative tone that had dominated my childhood. "It's time we discuss the future of Hastings Manufacturing." My mother, Patricia, smiled that practiced smile she'd perfected over 30 years of marriage, while Marcus and Derek exchanged knowing glances. At 31 and 29 respectively, they'd been circling this moment like vultures for years. "As I approach my 60th birthday, I've made some important decisions about succession," he continued. My heart hammered against my ribs. Maybe, just maybe, this would be different. Marcus will assume the role of CEO, with Derek as COO. The company shares will be divided equally between them, ensuring Hastings Manufacturing remains strong under male leadership. The words hit me like a physical blow. Male leadership, not family leadership, male leadership. I felt my mother's eyes dart toward me briefly, before she quickly looked away, her complicity as painful as my father's dismissal. "Dad?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What about me? I have an MBA from Stanford. I've been developing manufacturing efficiency software that could revolutionize—" "Victoria," he interrupted with a condescending smile, "your little computer hobby is charming, but this is serious business. Besides, when you find the right husband, you'll be too busy with your own family to worry about such things." The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly, while Derek studied his wineglass as if it held the secrets of the universe. Neither said a word in my defense. Their silence spoke volumes. "I see," I said, carefully placing my napkin beside my plate. My hands were trembling, but my voice remained steady. "Well, thank you for clarifying where I stand in this family." "Now, Victoria, don't be dramatic," my mother chided softly. "Your father knows what's best for the business." That night, lying in my childhood bedroom surrounded by the pink walls and horse posters that hadn't been updated since I was 12, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to exclude me from their legacy, I'd build my own. And it would be bigger, better, and more successful than anything they could imagine. I spent the next 3 days researching everything I could about advanced manufacturing technologies, artificial intelligence applications, and predictive maintenance systems. By New Year's Day, I had the framework for what would become Precision Analytics, a company that would revolutionize how factories operate. Leaving Omaha that January felt like stepping into a different universe. Back in my small San Jose apartment, surrounded by whiteboards covered in algorithms and business models, I threw myself into building Precision Analytics with an intensity that bordered on obsession. My startup focused on predictive maintenance AI for manufacturing equipment, essentially teaching machines to predict their own failures before they happened. The early days were brutal. I was bootstrapping everything, living on ramen noodles and determination. While my brothers were settling into their inherited corner offices, I was coding 18-hour days and pitching to anyone who would listen. The rejection letters piled up like autumn leaves. Too technical. Not proven. Unclear market fit. Each rejection stung, but it also fueled my determination. My breakthrough came 6 months later during a pitch to Elena Rodriguez, a venture capitalist who'd built her reputation investing in overlooked founders. I was my 20th pitch that month, and I was exhausted. But something about Elena's directness reminded me of my Stanford professors who'd actually believed in my potential. "The technology is impressive," Elena said after my presentation, "but I need to understand your motivation. Why this? Why now?" I took a deep breath and told her about Christmas dinner, about being dismissed, about watching my brothers inherit an empire while I got condescending pats on the head. Elena's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in her eyes. "My father told me women don't understand real business," I concluded. "I'm going to prove him spectacularly wrong." Elena smiled for the first time during our meeting. "Victoria, that's exactly the kind of motivation that builds billion-dollar companies. Let's make this happen." The $2 million Series A funding felt like winning the lottery, but it was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Precision Analytics grew from my one-bedroom apartment coding sessions to a team of 12 engineers in a proper Palo Alto office. Our first major client was an aerospace manufacturer in Seattle, whose production line our AI had saved from a catastrophic failure that would have cost them $15 million. Word spread quickly in manufacturing circles. Our client base grew to include automotive plants, pharmaceutical facilities, and energy companies. Each success was validation, each client a step away from that humiliating Christmas dinner. But success in Silicon Valley is intoxicating and dangerous. I started believing my own press, making bolder moves, taking bigger risks. When Google approached us about acquisition talks in 2019, offering $50 million, I turned them down. Elena thought I was crazy, but I had bigger plans, much bigger. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was building cutting-edge technology that major corporations desperately wanted, my family business back in Nebraska was still using spreadsheets from the 1990s. I occasionally checked their financial reports. Public companies have no privacy, after all, and watched their margins slowly erode as competitors adopted more efficient operations. By 2020, Precision Analytics had grown to 150 employees and was valued at $300 million. I was featured on the cover of Forbes' 30 Under 30 issue. The article mentioned my Nebraska roots and family's manufacturing background, but thankfully didn't dive deeper into the personal story. I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March 2021, just as I was reviewing our quarterly reports. Precision Analytics had just closed a $75 million Series C, and our valuation had hit $1.2 billion. I was officially a unicorn founder, a status that still felt surreal. "Victoria, it's Derek." My brother's voice on the phone after 5 years of silence was jarring. I'd blocked their numbers after countless attempts to dismiss my business as a phase during the early years, but he'd called through my assistant. "Derek," I said, keeping my tone professional, "this is unexpected." "We need to talk," Can you come home? It's about Dad." My first instinct was to hang up, but something in his voice, desperation, maybe fear, made me pause. "What's wrong?" "He had a heart attack last week. He's stable, but—" Derek's voice cracked slightly. "The business is in trouble, Victoria. Bad trouble. We need your help." The next flight to Omaha couldn't come fast enough, not because I was rushing to help, but because I needed to see this with my own eyes. Hastings Manufacturing in crisis? The empire my father had deemed too important for a woman to inherit? Walking through the factory floor that Friday afternoon was like stepping back in time. The same equipment I remembered from childhood tours, barely updated. Workers operating machinery that should have been replaced a decade ago. The contrast with the high-tech facilities I consulted for was stark and depressing. Marcus met me at the main office, looking older than his 36 years. The confidence he'd inherited along with the company had been replaced by the hollow eyes of someone drowning in problems he couldn't solve. "How bad is it?" I asked without preamble. He handed me a folder thick with financial statements. The numbers were worse than I'd expected. Revenue down 40% over 3 years. Major contracts lost to competitors with more efficient operations. Equipment failures causing costly delays. Employee turnover at an all-time high. "We lost the Morrison Industries contract last month," Marcus said quietly. "That was 30% of our revenue. Their VP told me straight up that our delivery reliability was unacceptable in the modern era." I flipped through the reports, seeing problem after problem that precision analytics technology could have prevented. Predictable equipment failures that had caused production delays. Quality control issues that better monitoring would have caught early. It was like watching a slow-motion disaster that had been entirely avoidable. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Dad's recovering, but he's different. Humbled. He asked us to call you. He wants to make things right." "Make things right?" The words tasted bitter. 5 years too late for that conversation, don't you think? "Victoria, please." Marcus leaned forward, desperation clear in his voice. "We can pay consulting fees, whatever your rate is. We just need someone who understands both manufacturing and modern technology." I closed the folder and stood up. "I'll think about it." Robert Hastings looked smaller in the hospital bed than I'd ever seen him. The man who had commanded every room he entered for 60 years now seemed fragile, diminished by the monitors and tubes surrounding him. When I walked into his room at Methodist Hospital that Saturday morning, his eyes filled with tears. "Victoria," he whispered, reaching out with a shaking hand. "You came." I remained standing at the foot of his bed, arms crossed. "Derek said you wanted to see me." "I owe you an apology," he said, struggling to sit up straighter. "I was wrong. About everything." The words I'd waited to hear for years felt hollow now. Too late, too forced by circumstances rather than genuine recognition. "Are you apologizing because you mean it or because your company is failing?" He winced as if I'd slapped him. "Both, if I'm being honest. But Victoria, I need you to know. I was proud of you. I just didn't know how to show it." "You were proud of me?" My voice rose, despite my efforts to stay calm. "You dismissed everything I achieved as a hobby. You handed over your life's work to Marcus and Derek without even considering that I might be qualified." "I was protecting the old ways," he said weakly. "Manufacturing was a man's world when I started. I thought I was protecting you from a hostile environment." "You weren't protecting me. You were perpetuating it." Patricia, who had been sitting silently in the corner, finally spoke up. "Victoria, your father has been following your company's success. He has articles about you in his office." That revelation hit me harder than I expected. Secret pride felt almost worse than open dismissal. It meant he'd known I was capable all along, but had chosen to exclude me anyway. Over the next hour, Robert walked me through the family business's decline. It was a masterclass in how traditional thinking could destroy even the strongest foundation. They'd resisted automation, dismissed data analytics, and clung to relationships with suppliers who couldn't compete in the modern market. "Marcus and Derek are good men," he said finally, "but they don't have your vision. They think like I did, incrementally, safely. You think like the future." I left the hospital more conflicted than I'd ever been. The daughter in me felt vindicated by his admission, but the businesswoman saw an opportunity that was both tempting and terrifying. That evening, I met with Elena Rodriguez via video call from my hotel room. She'd flown out to Omaha when I'd told her about the situation. "So what are you thinking?" Elena asked, studying my face through the screen. "I'm thinking about buying them out," I said. "Not helping them. Buying them. Taking over completely." Elena's eyebrows shot up. "That's ambitious and potentially very expensive. Precision Analytics is worth $1.2 billion now. We could structure a deal, maybe bring in additional investors, turn Hastings Manufacturing into a showcase for our technology." "And your family's reaction to that?" I smiled for the first time in days. That would be the most interesting part. Walking into the Hastings Manufacturing boardroom 3 weeks later felt like entering enemy territory, except I wasn't there as a supplicant anymore. I was there as a predator. My legal team flanked me, 2 of Silicon Valley's best M&A attorneys and a valuation expert who could make numbers dance. Marcus, Derek, and the company's longtime CFO, Harold Winters, sat across from us. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically that I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," I began, setting my briefcase on the polished conference table. "I've given considerable thought to your request for help, and I have a proposal." Derek leaned forward eagerly. "What kind of consulting arrangement are you thinking?" "I'm not interested in consulting," I said calmly. "I'm interested in acquisition. I want to buy Hastings Manufacturing." The silence that followed was deafening. Harold's pen froze mid-note. Marcus went pale. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Buy us out?" Marcus finally managed. "Victoria, this is a family business. It's been in our family for 40 years. A family business that excluded me from the family succession," I reminded him. "A family business that's currently bleeding money and losing market share." I opened my briefcase and distributed copies of our proposal. Precision Analytics, in partnership with Hartwell Capital, is prepared to offer $85 million for 100% ownership of Hastings Manufacturing, its assets, and its contracts. Harold quickly scanned the documents, his eyes widening. This is above market value for our current situation." "It's a fair price for the potential I see," I said. "With our technology integrated into your operations, this facility could be a model for advanced manufacturing. But I need complete control to make that happen." Derek shook his head vigorously. "We can't sell Dad's company. He'd never forgive us." "Your father is recovering from a heart attack brought on by the stress of watching his life's work slowly die," I pointed out. "This sale would secure the company's future and your family's financial security." Marcus studied the proposal more carefully. "What would happen to the employees?" "To us." "The employees would benefit from job security and modernized operations. As for you and Derek," I paused deliberately, "you'd be welcome to stay on as division managers if you're qualified for the roles." The conditional phrasing wasn't accidental. After years of my qualifications being questioned, it felt appropriate to return the favor. Over the next 2 hours, we went through every aspect of the deal. The $85 million would be structured as $60 million cash and $25 million in Precision Analytics stock, giving them a stake in the company's future success. All existing employee contracts would be honored. The Hastings name would remain on the buildings. "We need time to think," Marcus said finally. "You have 48 hours, I replied, standing up. "After that, the offer expires." As I walked out of that boardroom, I felt something I'd never experienced before: complete control over my family's destiny. The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday. Marcus, his voice hollow with defeat, uttered 3 words that changed everything. "We accept your offer." The acquisition closed 6 weeks later. On May 15, 2021, I walked into Hastings Manufacturing as its new owner. The same building where I'd been dismissed as a child, where my contributions had been minimized, where I'd been told manufacturing was too complex for me to understand. My first act as owner wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of firing Marcus and Derek, I enrolled them in MIT's Executive Manufacturing Program. Instead of replacing the longtime employees, I invested in retraining programs. The revenge everyone anticipated became something much more complicated: redemption. "Why aren't you destroying us?" Derek asked during one of our weekly operations meetings. We were 3 months into the transformation, and the changes were already dramatic. Production efficiency was up 30% thanks to predictive maintenance systems. Worker satisfaction had improved significantly with modernized equipment and better safety protocols. "Because destroying you wouldn't prove anything," I said, reviewing our latest performance metrics. "Success proves everything." Robert returned to work part-time in August, his doctor's clearance allowing him 4 hours a day on site. The first time he walked through the transformed factory floor, he stood transfixed for 10 minutes, watching automated systems seamlessly coordinate with human workers. "This is extraordinary," he whispered, examining a real-time dashboard showing equipment performance across all production lines. "We could have prevented every major breakdown we've had in the last decade." "We could have," I agreed, "but we didn't know what we didn't know." The financial transformation was even more dramatic than the operational one. By year-end, Hastings Manufacturing was profitable again. The Morrison Industries contract, the one we'd lost due to reliability issues, came back to us after our perfect delivery record over 6 consecutive months. But the personal transformation was the most complex part of this journey. Working alongside the family that had excluded me forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths. Marcus admitted he'd always felt inadequate to inherit the business, but had been too proud to admit it. Derek revealed that he'd wanted to support me back at that Christmas dinner, but had been afraid of disappointing our father. "I was wrong," Robert said one afternoon as we reviewed quarterly reports in his old office, now mine. "Not just wrong about you, but wrong about what leadership looks like. I confused tradition with wisdom, familiarity with competence." The hardest conversation was with Patricia. My mother had lived her entire adult life deferring to my father's judgment, including his decision to exclude me from the business succession. Her guilt was palpable every time she visited the factory and saw what I'd accomplished. "I failed you as a mother," she said one day, tears streaming down her face. "I should have advocated for you. I should have stood up to your father." "You did what you thought was right at the time," I replied. "We all did. The question now is what we do going forward." By December 2021, Hastings Manufacturing was featured in Industry Week as a case study in successful modernization. The article highlighted our 47% improvement in overall equipment effectiveness and our 98% on-time delivery rate. The call from Elena Rodriguez came on a Tuesday morning in March 2022, exactly 1 year after that first desperate phone call from Derek. I was in the Hastings Manufacturing break room, sharing coffee with employees and discussing our expansion plans, when my phone buzzed with news that would change everything again. "Victoria, you need to sit down," Elena said, her voice vibrating with excitement. "Microsoft just made an offer for Precision Analytics, $1.7 billion. The number hit me like a physical force. $1.7 billion, not million, billion. For the company I'd built from nothing in my 1-bedroom apartment after being told I wasn't qualified for real business. The Microsoft acquisition offer was comprehensive. They wanted our entire predictive maintenance platform, our team, and our patent portfolio. The technology we developed was apparently crucial to their industrial IoT strategy, and they were willing to pay premium prices to acquire it rather than compete with it. "There's more," Elena continued. "They want to keep you as VP of Industrial AI, and they're specifically interested in using Hastings Manufacturing as a showcase facility for the integrated technology." I walked outside to the same parking lot where I'd cried in my car after that Christmas dinner 6 years earlier. The irony was almost overwhelming. The hobby my father had dismissed was now worth more than his entire life's work. The playing with gadgets had generated enough value to buy and sell his company 17 times over. That evening, I called a family meeting at the house. Robert, still recovering but much stronger now, sat at the head of the dining room table where he'd once announced my exclusion from the family legacy. Patricia, Marcus, Derek, and I gathered around the same mahogany surface where everything had started. "Microsoft has made an offer to acquire Precision Analytics," I announced without preamble, "for $1.7 billion. The number seemed to echo in the silent room. Marcus dropped his coffee cup, the ceramics shattering against the hardwood floor. Derek stared at me with an expression somewhere between admiration and disbelief. "Billion?" Patricia whispered. "With a B?" "With a very large B," I confirmed. The sale would make me one of the youngest self-made billionaires in tech. More importantly, it validates everything I've built over the past 6 years. Robert leaned back in his chair, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. Pride, regret, amazement, and something that might have been grief for the opportunities he'd denied both of us. "What does this mean for Hastings Manufacturing?" Marcus asked, ever practical. "Microsoft wants to use it as their flagship showcase for industrial AI integration. You'd all keep your positions, but we'd become the model that other manufacturers worldwide would study and emulate." Derek shook his head slowly. "I still can't believe our little sister became a billionaire." "Your little sister who you didn't think belonged in business," I corrected gently, but firmly. The conversation that followed lasted until nearly midnight. We talked about the past, about the future, about forgiveness and redemption, and the strange ways life brings families back together. But mostly we talked about how none of us could have predicted this outcome when we'd sat around this same table 6 years earlier. The Microsoft acquisition closed in September 2022. At 34, I became one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in American history. Forbes featured me on their cover with the headline, "The $1.7 billion Vindication." The article detailed my journey from excluded daughter to tech mogul, but what it couldn't capture was the complexity of what revenge actually looks like when it succeeds. Success, I learned, is a strange form of revenge because it transforms everyone involved. My brothers didn't become enemies to be destroyed. They became partners in building something bigger than any of us had imagined. My father didn't remain the villain of my story. He became a cautionary tale about the cost of limiting others' potential, including your own families. Today, Hastings Manufacturing employs 400 people and operates as Microsoft's premier showcase for industrial AI. We've been featured in Harvard Business Review, hosted delegations from manufacturing companies across 3 continents, and generated more revenue in our first integrated year than the company had in the previous 5 combined. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came last Christmas, exactly 6 years after that dinner that started everything. We gathered around the same table, but everything had changed. Robert, now fully recovered and working part-time as a manufacturing consultant, raised his glass to toast the daughter who saved our family by refusing to accept our limitations. Marcus runs day-to-day operations with a competence and confidence he never had before, freed from the pressure of living up to inherited expectations. Derek heads our workforce development program, helping other traditional manufacturers transition to modern systems. Patricia serves on the board of a foundation I established to support women in manufacturing and technology. As for me, I learned that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's transforming them into better versions of themselves, while becoming the person you were always meant to be. The little girl who was told she didn't belong in real business now owns one of the most advanced manufacturing facilities in North America. The woman who was excluded from her family's legacy built a bigger legacy and then used it to save theirs. So what's the moral of this story? Maybe it's that exclusion can become the greatest gift someone gives you, forcing you to build something entirely your own. Or maybe it's that families are complex, flawed, and capable of redemption when they're willing to change. What I know for certain is this: never let anyone else's limitations become your own. Whether it's family, society, or your own fears, the only permission you need to succeed is the permission you give yourself. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is proving that you never needed their approval in the first place.